The conference table was cold. That's the first thing I remember. The surface of it, fake mahogany, the kind you see in every mediator's office from Halifax to Vancouver. I remember pressing my palm flat against it and thinking, I refinished a table like this once, 41 years ago, in a garage in Kelowna that smelled like sawdust and motor oil. That was how all of this started. My name doesn't matter much for this story. What matters is that I am 63 years old. I built a flooring and millwork company from nothing, and on a Tuesday afternoon in March, my younger sister sat across from me and told a stranger that half of it belonged to her. I need to back up. I grew up in a small house in the Okanagan, the oldest of 3 kids. My father drove a delivery truck. My mother cleaned houses on the west side of town, the nicer side. We weren't poor in the way that makes for dramatic stories. We always had food, always had heat, but there was no cushion. There was never a cushion. I understood that early. When I was 19, I told my father I wasn't going to college. He didn't argue. He wasn't the arguing type. He just looked at me for a long moment over the kitchen table and said, "Then you'd better build something." He meant it practically. He was always practical. He gave me $9,000. It was his savings, 2 years of it, money he'd set aside without telling anyone. He said it was for me to start. Not alone. He was clear about that. He shook my hand like I was an adult and said the money was mine to use or lose. I used it. I rented a small workshop space on the edge of town, bought secondhand tools, and started doing custom hardwood floors, mostly residential. I'd show up, do clean work, charge fair prices, and leave a card on the kitchen counter. Word spreads in a small city. By the time I was 24, I had 2 employees. By the time I was 30, I had 14. My sister. I'll call her my younger sister, because that's how I still think of her. The little one. The one who cried when Dad drove her to university in Edmonton. She went a completely different direction. Studied accounting, finished her degree, did her CPA designation, built a career at a firm in Calgary. She's good at what she does. Was good, I should say. We don't speak much now. My brother, the middle one, went into teaching. Lives out in Nova Scotia. He was never part of this. Here is what I want to be honest about. I never resented either of them for their choices. I was proud of my sister, actually. The first time I saw her name on a firm letterhead, I framed it as a joke and gave it to her for Christmas. She laughed. We were close for a long time. My father got sick in 2016, Parkinson's, which is a slow disease, a long goodbye. He moved in with my wife and me for a while, then to a care facility in West Kelowna that was clean and kind and cost more than I want to say out loud. My sister visited when she could. That's the honest account. He died in January 2022, 41 years after he handed me that $9,000 and told me to build something. The estate wasn't complicated. The house had been sold years before to pay for his care. There were some savings, split 3 ways, and a few personal items. My brother and I handled most of it. My sister was busy with work, she said. That felt off to me at the time, but I let it go. The trouble started 6 months later. I got a letter, not from my sister directly, from her son, who was a paralegal and apparently decided this was a situation that warranted professional stationery. The letter said that my sister had reason to believe she was entitled to a portion of my company's equity based on representations made by our late father, and that she wished to resolve this matter through mediation before pursuing further legal action. I read it twice, then I put it down and went outside and stood in the backyard for a while. My company at that point was worth approximately $4.2 million. We had assessed it the previous year as part of a succession planning process. We had 17 full-time employees, contracts with 3 large residential developers in the Okanagan and 1 in the Lower Mainland, and a reputation built over 4 decades of careful work. My father had nothing to do with any of it. He gave me the money to begin, and then he watched from the sidelines like a proud man who understood that the thing he'd started wasn't his anymore. He came to the shop sometimes early on. He'd sit on a stool and drink coffee and ask questions he already knew the answers to, just to hear me talk about the work. After his diagnosis, he stopped coming. But he always asked. I agreed to mediation. My wife thought I should go straight to a lawyer. I told her I wanted to try to settle this without burning down what was left of our family. That was naive of me. The mediation was held in a mid-sized office building in downtown Kelowna, in a room with a round table and blinds that didn't quite close all the way. My sister arrived with her son and a woman I didn't recognize who turned out to be a family law consultant. I came with my accountant, a man I've worked with for 18 years, who drove up from Penticton and didn't charge me for the day because he said this was personal. The mediator was a professional, I'll say that. Neutral face, careful language. He let my sister's side go first. What I heard was this. Our father had told my sister on multiple occasions that the business was a family endeavor, that his $9,000 had been the founding capital of what became a multi-million-dollar company, that it was his intention, his expressed intention, stated verbally over years, that the children would share in what that money had created. Her son read from notes. He mentioned Christmas 2017. He mentioned a phone call from 2019. He mentioned a dinner in Kelowna in the summer of 2020 where, according to my sister, my father had said clearly that he considered the business to belong to all three of his children. My sister didn't look at me while he read. The mediator turned to me with that careful face and asked how I wished to respond. I said my father gave me a gift. He was very clear it was a gift. He had no ownership in my company. He was never a partner, never a shareholder, never listed on any document associated with the business. His intentions, whatever they were, had no legal standing. And I find it very difficult to sit here and listen to my father's memory being used this way. The mediator nodded. My sister's son started talking again. He said that verbal agreements in British Columbia family contexts had been recognized in certain court precedents, particularly where there was an established expectation of shared benefit. He said that $9,000 in 1982, which he noted would be equivalent to roughly $28,000 in today's dollars, was a substantial investment, not a casual gift. He said my sister had a reasonable claim. The mediator looked at me. And then he said something I still think about. He said, "It sounds like your father believed this was a shared family asset. Can you understand why your sister might feel that way?" Something shifted in the room when he said that. I could feel it. My accountant put his pen down. I thought about a lot of things in that moment. I thought about the 14-hour days in my 30s, the winters when I wasn't sure I could make payroll, the year the housing market in the interior collapsed and I had to lay off 6 people and it wrecked me for months. I thought about my father sitting on that stool drinking coffee. I thought about my sister's firm in Calgary, her condo downtown, the career she built completely independently of anything I'd ever done. And I thought about something I had brought with me, in a manila envelope, tucked under my notepad. I had not planned to use it right away. I was hoping it wouldn't be necessary. I slid the envelope across the table and said, "I'd like to submit something." Inside was a photocopy of the original check. Dated October 3rd, 1982, $9,000, made out to me personally from my father's account. Across the memo line, in my father's handwriting, were 4 words, "For your new start." And underneath that check was a letter. Handwritten, 2 pages, dated the same month. My father had written it the same week he gave me the money. I hadn't known it existed until I found it while going through a box of his things after the funeral. In the letter, he explained his reasoning. He said he had given money to my brother to help with his education and would do the same for my sister when she was ready. He said he wanted to give me something equivalent, since I had chosen not to go to university. He said, and I read this part slowly, out loud, at the mediation table. "This money is for you alone. I have no claim on what you build with it, and neither does anyone else. I give it freely with pride, with no conditions attached." The room was quiet. My sister's consultant leaned over and said something to her son. He said something back. My sister was looking at the table. The mediator asked to see the letter. I slid it to him. He read it. He read it again. Her son cleared his throat and said that the letter expressed the father's sentiment at the time of the gift, but did not necessarily negate statements made later in different circumstances, as the father's perspective on the business may have evolved. My accountant, who had been quiet for 2 hours, said, He didn't own the business. His perspective on it, evolved or not, was personal. He couldn't promise something he had no legal interest in. That's not how property works. Nobody answered him. My sister looked up then. For the first time all afternoon she looked directly at me, and I saw something in her face. Not anger, not calculation. She looked tired. She looked like someone who had talked herself into something over a long period of time, and was only now, in this room, beginning to hear what it sounded like out loud. I didn't feel victorious. I want to be honest about that. I felt something closer to grief. The mediator called a short recess. When we came back, her son said they wanted to table the discussion and consult further before proceeding. The mediation ended without resolution, which in practical terms meant my sister's claim evaporated. She would have needed to take it to court, and this letter made that a losing proposition, and everyone in the room knew it. They didn't pursue it further. I heard to my brother a few months later that my sister had decided to let it go. My brother called me around Christmas that year. He was careful about it, diplomatic, which is his nature. He said he thought she had genuinely believed what she was saying. He said Dad had told stories about the business over the years, especially toward the end, when he was ill and proud and maybe not always precise in how he talked about what was his and what wasn't. He said he didn't think she was lying. I've thought about that a lot. I think my brother is probably right. My father was a proud man. He gave me $9,000 and watched me build something worth more than $4 million, and I think in his mind, in his stories, it became his too. Not through greed. He didn't have a greedy bone in him. But through love, maybe. Through the way fathers sometimes fold themselves into their children's lives and lose track of where the line is. He couldn't have known his stories would become evidence. He couldn't have known that what he said at a Christmas dinner or a summer barbecue would be carried into a mediator's office 40 years later. He was just a man who was proud, talking the way proud people do. I still have his letter. It's in a frame now, in my office, next to the original building permit for the first commercial job I ever won. People ask about it sometimes. I tell them it's a letter from my father. I don't explain the rest usually. It's not the kind of story that fits easily into small talk. My sister and I spoke once, briefly, at a cousin's wedding last summer. We didn't talk about any of it. We talked about the food, and her son's new apartment in Toronto, and whether the drive from Calgary had been bad. It was awkward in the way that things are when a lot has been said and then nothing is said. I don't know if we'll ever be close again. I'd like to believe we might be. What I know for certain is this. My father handed me $9,000 and told me to build something. I built it. 41 years of early mornings and cold job sites and decisions that kept me up at night, and decisions I still second guess. That business is mine. Built by my hands, my crew, my choices, my losses. The founding money was a gift, freely given. It said so in 4 words on a check and 2 pages in a letter, in my father's own handwriting. The one thing I've told every person who's ever worked for me, every young tradesperson who's asked for advice, document everything, not because you don't trust people, because time is long and memory shifts, and the people you love most are sometimes the ones who can hurt you in ways you never saw coming. Keep your paperwork, keep your letters, keep the things that are true in writing, so that when the moment comes, and sometimes it comes, you have something to put on the table. I refinished a table like that once, 41 years ago, in a garage in Kelowna, with tools I bought used with money my father gave me. That's where all of this started. That's where it ends. I've had a lot of time to sit with what happened in that room, and the longer I sit with it, the more I think this story isn't really about a business, or a check, or a letter written in October 1982. It's about what we owe each other, and what we can't give away on someone else's behalf. My father was a good man. A practical, quiet, honest man who drove a delivery truck and saved money in increments and never asked for recognition. When he handed me that $9,000, he wasn't making an investment. He was stepping back. He knew the difference. He wrote it down because he was that kind of man, clear-eyed, careful, fair. He gave my brother money for school. He did the same for my sister when her time came. He believed in equity, in each of his kids getting a fair start. What happened after that start was supposed to be ours alone. What I've come to understand is that when we carry pride in someone else's work, we sometimes start to blur the line between witnessing something and owning it. My father told stories about the business because he was proud. 41 years of watching something grow from a garage in Kelowna into a real company with real people counting on it. Of course he talked about it. Of course it became part of how he saw himself. Toward the end. That's not a character flaw. That's what love does. It reaches toward the things that matter to the people we love. But pride isn't a deed. Affection isn't a contract. And the hardest part of what happened with my sister isn't the mediation, or the letter from her son, or the afternoon in that office with the blinds that didn't close all the way. The hardest part is that somewhere along the way, she heard those stories and let herself believe they meant something legal. And once you believe something long enough, it starts to feel like a fact. I thought about my own role in it too. I could have been clearer over the years about what the business was and wasn't. I could have had those uncomfortable conversations while my father was still alive, while there was still time to correct the record gently. I didn't. I assumed everyone understood. That assumption cost me a year of stress and a relationship that still hasn't fully healed. What I know now, what I'd tell anyone who is building something, is that the work of protecting what you've built isn't a betrayal of trust. It's a form of respect. Respect for the people who work with you, for the decisions you've made, for the years you can't get back. My father understood that. He put it in writing because he wanted to be fair to all of us, including me. That letter wasn't a legal document so much as a record of his integrity. 41 years is a long time to build something. The document that saved it was 2 pages, handwritten, tucked in a box I almost didn't open. I am grateful every day that I did.